All right, everyone. Today I'm giving you a 5 to 8 minute overview of Chapter 2 of Lead and Disrupt. And I'm going to make it real with a Kentucky story from Papa John's Pizza, which I can talk about because I actually work there. And yes, pizza is part of what ultimately took me to Russia and then ultimately where I am now in Lithuania. So if you're wondering whether operations can change your life, well, apparently it can. Chapter 2 is essentially about one big tension that every growing company faces. How do you keep executing what works today while still building what will work tomorrow? The chapter frames that tension as exploitation versus exploration, and then gives us two tools to diagnose why it's so hard. The congruence model, which is alignment drives performance, and then there's that success syndrome. Success creates rigidity. So if you remember nothing else, remember this. Most organizations don't fail because they're poorly run. They fail because they're brilliantly designed for a world that changed. So explore versus exploit. Two kinds of work, two different operating systems. Let's start with the exploitation. Exploitation is what mature organizations are built to do. It's about efficiency and consistency, quality, margins, repeatability. It's taking something that works and making it work better and cheaper at scale. Exploration is different. Exploration is the startup side of the brain. It's the search and the experimentation, learning, customer discovery, new products, new markets, and new business models. Things where the payoff is very, very uncertain. Here's the simplest way to say it. Exploitation runs today's engine, whereas exploration builds the next engine. And the reason this is a problem inside companies is that exploitation and exploration demand different things. They demand different metrics, different talent, different timelines, different tolerance for uncertainty. So if you run exploration using exploitation mindset, it often gets labeled as inefficiently and just quietly goes off to die. Now, Chapter 2 introduces the first diagnostic tool, the congruence model. This model basically says great performance isn't just about strategy, it's about fit. You can think of it like an organizational alignment checklist. If you're pursuing a strategy, especially an exploratory one, does your organization actually support it? The simplified version looks at alignment across four different areas. The first, the work. What people actually do day to day and the processes and capabilities that are required. Secondly, is the people skills, the mindsets, the incentives, and what kind of talent your strategy needs. And then thirdly, it's the formal organizational structure, decision rights, budgeting, governance, and this is huge, your metrics, KPIs, and what you're going to measure. The fourth is in the informal organizational culture, so the norms, the politics, how the work really gets done when nobody's watching. The key idea is when these are aligned, performance is strong, and when they're misaligned, you get friction, confusion, and failure, especially with innovation. So the Papa John story. What exploration looks like inside of an exploitation machine. Now, let me plug into the Kentucky example. Papa John's, which was formerly headquartered in Louisville, just recently moved to Atlanta, I believe. So Papa John's, like most franchise-driven food businesses, is built for exploitation excellence. It's very repeatable, operation-centric, predictable unit economics, consistent quality, tight controls, and disciplined execution. And when you're scaling pizza at that level, everything is about repeatability. Because if you mess up a pizza at scale, it's not one bad pizza, it's 1,000 angry people on the internet before lunchtime. And yes, I have lived through the emotional intensity of a pepperoni supply discussion. There are meetings where you realize, wow, logistics really is a contact sport. But here's where Chapter 2 becomes real at different points. Papa John's made exploration bets, like moving aggressively into digital ordering, and later experimenting with new tech-driven customer experiences. Now, here's the congruence model lesson. If you want exploration to succeed inside a mature system, you can't just announce it. You can't send out a memo or an email. You have to align the system around it. The work has to change. There's new processes for digital ordering, customer data, new workflows. The people has to change. There's different skills, UX experimentation. The formal organization has to change, different governance and metrics. Because early innovation isn't about ROI. It's learning and adopting informal organizational changes. A culture that doesn't treat experimentation like a distraction from the real work. Because if your exploration team gets measured like the core business, You get the innovation version of a horror movie. Congratulations on your new product. Now hit mature business margin targets by next Tuesday. And you know that's never going to happen. So that's not innovation. That's just a very well-funded failure, you might say. So now the second framework in chapter 2 is the success syndrome. This is one of those concepts that feels obvious after you see it, but it explains a lot of corporate behavior, really, in my experience. So the success syndrome says when a company succeeds, it builds tight alignment around what made it successful. And over time, that alignment becomes rigidity, especially when the environment changes. It doesn't adapt to change well. So it's not that the leaders are dumb, it's that the organization becomes highly optimized for yesterday or the way things were or are. The success syndrome often shows up as a few traps. The first one being the metrics traps. You measure what you know how to measure. Efficiency, margin, predictability. But exploration looks bad early because learning doesn't show up as profit right away. The resource allocation trap is a second, and that's the core business always wins budgeting because it has evidence and forecasts and a track record. New ventures look risky, so they get starved for resources. And the third thing is the talent trap. You promote your best operators because they hit the targets, but exploration needs people who can experiment, pivot, and learn fast. They need to be agile. And the fourth thing is the cultural trap. The organization starts treating execution as real work and experimentation as play. The customer trap is where you're listening only to your best current customers, and it can blind you to what's emerging. And here's the entrepreneurship twist. Startups get success syndrome too. It just happens a lot faster because as soon as you find a product market fit, you start building process. Then the process becomes identity, and then the identity becomes a cage. My Pizza to Lithuania punchline, systems take you places. Now, let me connect this back to my own weird journey. I worked at Papa John's, and that gave me experience and gave me something entrepreneurs sometimes underestimate, a front row seat to how systems scale. And that kind of work, the operations, supply chain, and execution, can absolutely become a passport. In my case, it helped take me to Russia, and then, like I said, ultimately to Lithuania. So if your parents tell you pizza is going nowhere, you can confidently say, well, actually, pizza can take you internationally. Now, not a lot of people can say pepperoni was step one of my globalization strategy, but here we are. So 3 takeaways you can apply as entrepreneurs. Let me close chapter 2 with 3 takeaways. You can carry into your entrepreneurial career these things. So takeaway 1 is that exploration and exploitation are different operating systems. Don't manage experimentation with mature business rules. Takeaway number 2 is that if you use the congruence model as a diagnostic tool, if you say we're innovating, check alignment across work, people, formal organization, and the informal culture. Takeaway 3 is watch for the success syndrome, especially as you grow. The things that made you successful will try to become your identity and then ultimately will be your constraints. And here's the question I want you to sit with. What's the next engine you're building, and are you measuring it like a new venture or like a mature business? That's chapter 2. See you next week. Thank you, guys.